Ladies and gentlemen, this is a new segment of full classes. You'll see in a moment what it's going to be about. And it basically is going to fit in, it's a bit of a hint, it's going to fit in beautifully with the parshios that we are reading at the moment. What we're reading on Shabbos, what we're learning in Chumash is going to fit in with what we're learning about Tefillah. So let me ask you all a question. I, representing my gender here in this room, as an adult, hopefully sane male, how many times a day am I obligated to daven a Shemona Esrei, to daven the 19 blessings? 3? Uno, dos, tres. Yeah, you sure? Okay. Everyone's convinced? Prove it to me. Prove to me that I'm obligated to pray 3 times a day. Thank you very much. So what's your name, please? Elisheva says that the Talmud in Tractate Brachot 26b says Tfilos Avos Tiknum, which means that the forefathers, I don't know why the word forefathers is very annoying. It should be the 3 fathers. But the annoyingly named forefathers, they gave us the 3 prayers. So it works as follows. Abraham gave us the morning prayer, Kol Shacharis. Yitzchak gave us the afternoon prayer. And Yaakov gave us the prayer at night. Again, Avraham, look at the word Avraham. Look at the second letter of Avraham. What do you see? A base. So my little kinderlich, my children, when they were in kindergarten, they used to come out with this coloring page, and you saw Abraham, and out of the base of Avraham came the word boker, which meant morning, and you'd see a sunrise. And then Yitzchak, the second letter is tzaddik. Tzaddik stands for tzaharayim, which means afternoon, and you'd see a sunset. And then Yaakov, which is an ayin, is arvit, which is the way the Sephardim call mariv, and you see a picture of the night. And that is Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, morning, afternoon, and evening. They are the ones that made the 3 tefillos for us. Now, is everybody here happy with that answer? Are you all satisfied? Elisheva, you satisfied with that answer?
No.
Why not?
I want to know why.
Okay, but that's my job. I'm going to give you the why in a moment, but I just want to know, does anyone, just generally speaking, if a yeshiva guy asks you a question, what's the general answer? It's a machleka, right? It's always 2 sides. So what does the Gemara bring down? The Talmud, on the same page, 26b, where it says that tefillos come from the forefathers, brings down another opinion that, thank you very much, Elisheva, that tefillah corresponds to the sacrifices. Tfilos keneged karbanos tiknum, which means the morning prayer, shacharis, corresponds to the morning sacrifice, the tamid shel boker. The afternoon sacrifice corresponds to mincha, the afternoon prayer, and at night we have, I think it's a seminary favorite. It's called the burning of the fats. It's basically a workout on the Mizbeach, on the great altar, where all the fats of the animals are basically burnt all night long, and the Kohanim are like working out there, and I'm just kidding. But the point is, you have nothing is happening at night. At night, the Beis Hamikdash is quiet. At night, nothing is happening, but the fats continue to burn, and that corresponds to the evening prayer Mariv. So far, you and I have just basically learned 5 lines of Talmud, and we see there's 2 sides. Tefillah keneged karbonos, tefillah keneged avos. The forefathers and the sacrifices. What's the law? How do we paskin? Men have to daven 3 times a day. Well, can anyone think of what's called, in fancy Talmudic language, a nafkamina, a practical difference between the 2 sides? I'll give you a clue. Women are really interested in this practical difference. It makes a huge difference for them. And those of you who have my book on Rik Shelev and Women in Tefillah, what? The difference is that nighttime, there is no sacrifice. And therefore nighttime, which corresponds to the burning of the fats, is called a voluntary prayer, which men at a later date took upon themselves this obligation, and you folks did not. The ladies did not, which is a good thing, because women are not allowed to be time-bound. Women need to be flexible, and therefore they never took it upon themselves. I'm not a big fan, just saying this publicly, of women davening Mariv. I'm a big fan of women davening less, but davening it with more kavanah. In other words, better to do a little bit, but do it well than do a lot and be overwhelmed. That's my general opinion. Of course, there are exceptions to the rule. I'm not giving a rule for every person over here. But the point is as follows. Men took upon themselves to do the evening sacrifice, to do the evening prayer as something obligatory. So God willing, your husbands or future husbands, they will go to the synagogue at night as well to daven Mariv, to daven Arvit. But ladies did not, because the Rambam, Paskins Lahalacha, the Rambam brings down that the evening service is essentially a voluntary service, and he mentions in many places this idea that the tefillos correspond to the korbanos, and basically, I'm just adding this now, but this is a complex and deep idea that needs a lot of explanation. When the rabbis, at the time of the destruction of the temple, when they wrote the prayer book, they wrote it to imitate what happened during the time of the temple. So a little bit our synagogues, so to speak, simulate the atmosphere of the Beis HaMikdash in many different levels, but that's a different class, that's for a different time, that needs to be explained elsewhere. That is that unique thing that we try and imitate what happened in the times of the temple. Be that as it may, now I want to ask the main question. Everything I did till now was basically a warm-up. Now I'm going to ask you the following question. I just mentioned to you that Avram Avinu, he gave us Shacharis. When did he give us Shacharis? In last week's Parsha. We'll talk about it more next week. He's davening for those cuddly, affable citizens of Sodom. That's next week's class. I want to ask you a question. Did Avram Avinu daven Mincha? No. In other words, a few decades later, Yitzchak would institute Mincha. Until that time, did Avram Avinu daven Mincha? Everyone's saying no. Yes. When Avram was a little boy, did he daven Mincha? When Yitzchak was a little boy, did his daddy teach him to daven Mincha? Did Avram daven Mariv? Most people are giving me that no, that niet look.
It's not the same with that. They did also Pesach and everything.
There we go. What's your name?
Esther.
Esther reminds us that we know that the forefathers kept the whole Torah. See, if they kept the whole Torah, and the rabbi said they even kept rabbinical customs like Erev Tavshilin, they kept even rabbinical stuff, certainly Avram Avinu would have davened Mincha and would have davened Mariv. So what does it mean that Yitzchak gave us Mincha if we're going to say that Avram Avinu davened Mincha because he kept everything? I'm sorry if your brains are hurting. It's a lunchtime class. You're thinking, Rabbi, can you fluff this up a little bit? No, I'm sorry. I'm forcing you to think. What do you say? How does this work? Let me drive you even crazier. Let me add to the general mix over here. Our very favorite Rambam, Maimonides, the greatest rabbinic decisor of all time, in other words, the one whose laws are so incredibly important to us. He, as we just mentioned, he paskins, he brings down the law that tefillah is connected the korbanos, corresponds to the sacrifices. But it's not really, really true. Because there's another place, at the very, very end of Maimonides' books. Maimonides is a huge book. Today you buy it in 14 volumes, sometimes even more. It's called the Yad HaChazaka. At the very end, he's got the laws of kings. And in the laws of kings, he talks about the 7 Noahide laws, and he brings down basically how halacha developed. And there he says the following thing. In Hilchos Malachim, in Perek Tes, he brings down that Avram Avinu gave us a mitzvah called Bris Milah, circumcision, and he gave us a prayer called Shacharis. Yitzchak gave us tithes, which I'm not going to explain now, and he gave us a prayer called Mincha. Actually, he doesn't call it Mincha, he calls it a prayer for when the sun is setting. A prayer for when the sun is setting. Keep that in the back of your mind, it's going to be important in a few minutes. And then Yaakov gave us the mitzvah that you are forbidden to eat the Gid HaNasheh. The Gid HaNasheh is the sciatic nerve. You're going to learn this story in a couple of weeks. that Yitzchak, the Yaakov, he struggled with the angel, and the angel whacked him in the place of the sciatic nerve and caused him to limp, and that's why we don't eat it, etc., etc. I'm sure your teachers here would love to explain you all the deeper insights about the Gid HaNoshe. But then it says, and he gave us a prayer for nighttime. Now, he's not telling us stories. This is his halacha book. This is his book of laws, and he's telling us that the Avos, the wrongly named forefathers, the three fathers, they gave us Shachris, Mincha, and Mariv. So we have a contradiction in Maimonides himself. In the laws of prayer, he says that tefillah corresponds to the sacrifices. In the laws of kings, he tells us that prayer corresponds to the forefathers. Will the real answer please stand up? What are we going to do, ladies? How are we going to resolve this? So, at the back of the Talmud, there's a rabbi called the Maharsha. So he lived in Poland 500 years ago. More or less the same time in Prague was the Maharal of Prague, and both of them came up with the same idea. And this is today's class, because I want to explain this to you and make it relevant to your own lives, because as I've told you many, many times, I don't like just to give you theory. I want to show you a little bit, a deeper understanding of how you live your life. And they say the following thing, and I quote, I'm going to first quote the Maharsha, and then I'm going to explain it in greater detail using the Maharal. For those of you that want to look it up, the Maharal is found in what's called Nesiv HaAvoda. He has a bunch of essays on prayer on a book called Nesivas Olam. And there in the third parak, he says this awesome, beautiful concept that I'm about to teach you. This is what he says. The Maharsha says, each Av wrote a prayer lefi midaso, according to his unique personality. That's what he says. Each Av wrote a prayer based on his unique personality. And this will need a little bit of explanation, a little bit of fundamentals of Judaism I have to explain to you. If you haven't heard these ideas, I'm so proud to teach it to you, because I'm about to teach you now is the fundamentals of fundamentals. Just a quick summary, because this is about to become very dramatic. So far, we've said the following thing. We've said that we know that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the three forefathers, that each one of them gave us a prayer. Avram gave us Shacharis, Yitzchak gave us Mincha, Yaakov gave us Mariv. We also know that Maimonides says that this is not just a casual piece of fascinating history. This has halachic implications. This actually matters into how we pray. We need to know in the mornings we're davening Abraham's prayer. In the afternoon, we're davening Isaac's prayer. At night, we're davening Jacob's prayer. We need to understand that what we're saying comes together with the Av. It is crucial, says Maimonides, to understand that our tefillos and the avos are interconnected. So let me go back a little bit and start from the beginning of the beginning of the beginning. Once upon a time, there was a man called Adam. And Adam opens his eyes. Adam Harishon opens his eyes, and he sees a world that cannot survive. He sees a world where there's no rain. He sees a dark and foreboding universe where there's nothing green and nothing that is edible. And he turns to God, and the very first words to come out of mankind is, God, I cannot survive this way. And the rains come down, and the whole world turns into the lush, beautiful Garden of Eden. And here we see that the essential expression of humanity is that we are people who pray. We are a race. We are a creature that expresses ourselves through prayer. Interesting, the word Adam. So the word Adam, which is who we are, if you take the Aleph of Adam, so hidden in the word Aleph is Lamed Pei. Aleph, right? Aleph, Lamed Pei. You take the word Dalet, which is the second word, hidden in Dalet is Lamed Tov. You take Mem, hidden in Mem is the second Mem. All those hidden letters, you can do this when you're bored in a class. If you make an anagram, you get the word Mitpalel, the creature that prays. Man, praise is what we do. I saw recently the most beautiful, beautiful letter from Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein was asked, do non-Jewish people have a mitzvah to pray? So it is possible, almost statistically, there's a guy in this room who has a non-Jewish relative, maybe a father. And do they have a mitzvah to pray? So the instinctual answer is no, they don't, because there are 7 commandments that they have to keep, and none of them is the mitzvah of prayer. Wrong. Wrong, says Rav Moshe Feinstein. One of their obligations is called belief in God. And if you honestly believe in God, then you instinctually know that you have to turn to Him when you're stressed. And all of humanity is always stressed. Think about your lives. And you guys are just warming up, no offense. Okay, try raising little kids. And you think that's bad, try teenagers. The fun is still to come, ladies. The fun is still to come. But the point is that Hashem keeps us close, like we said last week. And how does He keep us close? He makes our lives crazy. If you believe in God, then by definition, you turn to Him and you pray to Him. Then came along the forefathers. And they, for the Jewish people, gave us a special gift. And here we need to understand something very, very deep. The first thing we need to understand is something that I've said here from this place that I'm speaking now. I've said it before, I will say it again. I believe this is one of the most important principles of Judaism. Jews believe that time is something that we travel through in exactly the same way as we travel through space. I'm not going to explain this in great detail, but you and I know that we can travel through space. So you get on a plane, whatever, you wake up in the morning and you're in Mexico, wherever you can, right? You wake up in Mexico, and at night you find yourself in Israel. At different cultures, different foods, different languages, everything's different. You've traveled from place A to place B. In exactly the same way, those of you remember, I gave this class, I think, a month ago to some of you, to the Moroccos. If you're traveling from Tishri to Cheshvan, so Tishri is a month of closeness to God, and Cheshvan is a month where God disappears. There's a totally different atmosphere and a totally different feeling. So when you're traveling through time, you feel the same differences as when you're traveling through space. Another example is that every 7 days, you're supposed to feel different. We just came out of the Shabbos project. So I don't know if it made it here to Harnoff, but where I was for the Shabbos project in Houston, Texas, and in Denver, Colorado, everyone was talking about it. It was like, this was the big thing, was the Shabbos project. And there I spoke about the Shabbos project as being a journey into a place that is beyond time and space. You're going into God's world. So I described the experience of Shabbat, of Shabbos, as, so to speak, you're leaving this world and you're entering into this otherworldly existence called the taste of the world to come. Now, no offense to me and you, but we tend not to feel it. But I knew people who knew exactly, you could put them into a closed room, into a dark room, and they would know in their bones that Shabbos had just come in. How do I know this? How do you think? You probably think I'm crazy, but one of my teachers was called Rav Shlomo Volba, the Ali Shar of blessed memory, and his teacher was Rabbi Yerucham of the Mir. Rabbi Yerucham was so attuned to the journey of time that he knew when Shabbos was coming in. And this is a little bit crazy to imagine. My Rebbe, my teacher told me that you can actually see it on his face. You can see the glow on his face. You can see the shine in his face, that he knew that Shabbos had just come in. He traveled through time. So Judaism has different cycles of time. We have years, we have months, we have the days of the week. So when you get married, many of you will choose to get married on Tuesday, because Tuesday is a day that was created with extra layers of goodness. But now I'm going to teach you something new. The 24-hour clock is not just a 24-hour clock. The 24-hour clock is 3 totally different time zones with 3 totally different experiences. I'm going to explain this properly. That's why I now have another half an hour. I'm going to explain this to you properly. But in the morning, the sun rises. Sure looks like the sun's rising down yonder. Right, Morgan? Right, to go. Okay, sun's going up. Sun goes up. In the afternoon, the sun goes down. And at night, it's dark. And each, here again, you don't have to be a religious Jew to know this, each of these 3 parts of the day creates different moods. In the morning is filled with hope. In the afternoon, you feel a little bit the day is dying. And the sun basically bleeds the day to death. And then at night, today, the night is very different because we have electricity, but most of world history, unless you were rich and you could afford candles, or you could afford oil and to make some light, at night you felt insecure. At night you felt you were not in control. So that's why even to today, there's this, the moment it gets dark, a lot of you know this feeling, you gotta go party. You feel antsy. You gotta, you know what I mean? Then you gotta hit the wild lights. Because at night, you feel an existential emptiness that needs to be fulfilled somehow or other. And that's the world of darkness, the world of night. Now, what we're going to learn now is something incredible. That once upon a time, there were three people. And these three people were not ordinary people. They were human beings, but they were also roots. They were the roots of the Jewish people, just like an apple tree has roots. So you and I, as a nation, have roots. And every single person in this room has these three people and their wives inside of them. I'm asking you to take this literally, not just to say this in a figurative. Whenever my students go to Hebron and they go to the cave of the patriarchs, the Maras Machpelah, I always tell them, please close your eyes and think that you're praying to grandma and grandpa. I want you to make this literal. I want you to imagine that if Sarah would walk into this room, a lot of you would say, oh my gosh, she has my eyes. And I would say to you, duh, you're her great-granddaughter. Of course you do. What's the big deal? I have her hair, everything. She's grandma. These people were real. And they created the foundations of the Jewish people. But what we need to understand a little bit deeper is not only were they very real people, and they had marriages, and they had children, and they had struggles, and they would cry, and they would laugh, and they were regular people building family, but they were not regular people. They knew that everything they did was the roots of the story that was going to last all the way to the coming of Mashiach. They knew that they were writing their lives was a story that would last for thousands of years. So now, each one of the forefathers dedicated their lives to what's called in Hebrew a different midah. The word midah means a different characteristic. So I'm going to say it very superficially, but then I'm going to explain it a little bit Kabbalistically, if that's okay. Superficially, Abraham's life was surrounded with chesed, exactly, with loving kindness. Yitzchak was gevura, which is inner strength, and Yaakov was the world of truth. Yaakov was the world of truth. Just parenthetically, each of us in this room have a little bit of that inside of us. So we can never be as great as them, but we can do things like they would do. So it's possible that late at night, your roommate is asleep, and you're coming in late, and you decide that you're going to walk into the room, and whatever happens, you're not going to wake her up. Because what can I tell you? You're chesed girls, right? The Morot dorms, everyone's quiet at night and respectful, making sure that everyone, all the nerdy ones that go to sleep early, so the party girls don't want to wake them up, God forbid. So they come to the dorm, they take off their shoes, and they walk around like fairies, and they slowly open the doors, and they walk in. Everything they do is so considerate and they sort of slip under the bed, because that's it. Because at that moment then, you are exactly imitating what Sarah would do, because her husband Abraham, was exhausted, running around in the heat, taking care of all these Bedouins, and now he's exhausted, he gets an early night, and then Sarah comes in, and she's busy, she's busy making all that ox tongue, that she was preparing. So she's finished doing her stuff, she comes in, and she does exactly what you would have done to make sure that she doesn't, God forbid, wake up her husband. So that's it. We have these people inside of us. The ability not to say a lie. We get from Yaakov. There are girls in this room who will actually tell the truth to a traffic cop. Can you imagine? I know your mother's taught you to use your feminine charms and say, oh, I didn't see, I didn't know. Sure, okay? I know it works. But the point is that some of you will say, okay, you're right, I saw it, and I took the risk and I lost. I'll pay the fine. It's because you have Yaakov inside of you. And Yitzchak Avinu, so his ability to say no. All your friends are going to a place. There's peer pressure. That place is a place that you decided you no longer go to these kind of places. You guys can fit in the missing dots. I don't want to get into trouble. That's it. You say to your friends, I'm sorry, you guys can go without me. And they say, what are you going to do tonight? I says, I don't know. I'll play Candy Crush, kill time. But that moment, you have become Yitzchak. You become Yitzchak and Rivka and Rebecca. That ability to withstand pressure when everyone else is doing something, that's Gvura, that's inner strength. Now, let's take this all a little bit deeper, if I may. I just want to tell you, those of you that have had me for week after week know that I don't ever talk about Kabbalah. I just don't. First of all, I think it's wrong. I have this problem with it. I think it's wrong because certain things only have a true flavor if you don't water it down. It's like, you know what I mean? Like the only people that should learn Kabbalah are people that can go into the box and they can actually experience the light. The moment you make a hole in the box and the light comes out, so it's no longer pure light anymore. So anyone that teaches you Kabbalah, it's a little bit of a tease. The only thing is that we live in a world today where certain concepts are so spoken about. Literally, I'm going to LA in the beginning of January. And there, I'm going to be on Pico, I'm going to walk past the Kabbalah Institute on the way to Tarat Emet, whatever it's called, yeah? I get the Kabbalah Institute, and that, do you know what I mean? They have I see a signs for the Kabbalah kindergarten. So, I don't know what they teach, but one of the things they probably teach you is this mystical concept called Sephiros. These are the Sephiros in your neighborhood. I can just teach in the kindergarten for Kabbalah Institute. Today we're going to learn all about the mystical concept of Yesod. Come on, children, let's learn this together. And this is what is out there. It's basically, there's websites, and Art Scroll talks about it. So the Art Scroll talks about these things. I can talk about it a little bit, just a little glimpse, only because it is going to enrich our understanding of these three prayers. And that is the following thing. I'm going to say something. You can write it down in your notes. But I'm asking you all to understand that to understand this fully, you need years and years and years and years and years of training. We are like little children going to a science museum. And we're going to the section that talks about subatomic research. And we're going to look at these things through slides and pictures and try and understand a little bit. But we know full well that to really grasp it, we're going to have to go to all the steps until we finally, do post-PhD research, and then we can fully understand these things. But the idea of Sephiros is the following. Once upon a time, when God created the world, he created what's called the 7 Sephiros. Okay, nothing to do with the 7 dwarfs, or whatever it is, or for you guys, the 7 Horcruxes. Okay, there's a lot of 7s out there. They're all Harry Potter crazy, these people. Okay? But there's a lot of 7s out there. When God created the world, he created the world with 7s. And one of the things he did in the higher world, he created what's called Sephiros. You write them with a PH, because that way it looks cool. You know what I mean? Sephirot, right? And so you write the 7 Sephiros, and each one of them stood there in the higher worlds. And they needed someone to bring them down into the lower worlds so that you can fix up the world. So we have what's called, in Jewish mystical thought, the 7 shepherds. The 7 shepherds became famous because we invite them every night into our sukkah. As some of you are aware, the first night we invite Abraham, second night Isaac, Jacob, and Aaron, Moshe, Yosef, and David. Okay, so we invite them, and we talk about them when we do Sfiras HaOmer, 7 times 7. So the first day is Abraham's day, the second day is Abraham combined with Isaac, and so on and so forth. So these things have become a little bit part of the popular Jewish mainstream culture, so I can talk about it a little freely. But what happened was the following thing. This is the point I want you to understand. Each one of the 7 shepherds, again, do not mix them up with the 7 dwarfs. The 7 shepherds, lahavdil, okay, the 7 shepherds, the 7 awesome shepherds, each one of them decided to take one midah, one of the 7 spheros, and to focus on it completely and totally and absolutely to the exclusion of anything else. In other words, this would be their whole focus until they would embody that midah, until they would embody that characteristic. That would be the moment when that midah had been taken from the higher worlds down into the lower worlds, and from now onwards, the Jewish people can access these midos through these 7 shepherds. Translation into simple English. A lot of people can do kind deeds, but real chesed, pure altruistic chesed, where I'm doing something for you, without any ego, without any gain, totally and completely for you. That was Abraham who brought it down into this world. By the way, whenever I say Abraham, I always mean Abraham and his wife, right? So it's Avram and Sarah, Yitzchak and Rivka, Yaakov and Rachel and Leah. Each one of them together with their spouses brought down the Midah down into this world so that the Midah could be attached and could be accessed by us until the end of time. So that's how it worked. That's how the 7 Midahs came down to these 7 people. And now, of course, all 7 are down. And what we do is we use these 7 weapons, so to speak, to make the world into a better place, to fix this stuff. You know all this stuff, right? You learned this in kindergarten. The point I want to make is that Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, if you want to understand them properly, you'll understand that they dedicated their lives to these unique midos. And I just want to explain it a little bit deeply, and then we'll go back and understand how it fits in perfectly with the 3 segments of time. I'm sorry it's such a hard class today. By the way, this is one of the classes where you have to think. I really apologize. It's a lunchtime class. I know it's kind of some of you are like overloaded on those falafels, and like, you know what I mean? But I'm just asking you to stay with me for a few more moments. You have over here, you have Avraham. So traditionally, Avraham is always drawn on the right, Yitzchak on the left, and Yaakov in the middle. So I'm going to write in Hebrew, I'm going to write in the color red what their midah was. And Avram was chesed. Yitzchak was called gevura. And Yaakov, the fancy Kabbalistic thing, is tiferes. That's the fancy Kabbalistic phrase. But you just know, just for, chesed is sometimes connected to the word ahava, which is love. What's love got to do with it? That's for another day. And gevura is sometimes connected to what's called din, or pachad, or yira, etc., etc. And tiferes is sometimes associated with what's called rachamim, or emes, which is truth, or Torah. So all these things can be explained to you another day. What I want is to show you how I translate this into English. Because when I translate these words into English, it gives you a deeper understanding of what I want. Chesed, I'm translating it as outreach, to reach beyond yourself. Yitzchak is called inreach. And Yaakov is called harmony. Harmony, 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 harmony. Or, for you science geeks, synthesis, which is basically the same idea, just a little more scientifically said. But the point is, that's how it works over here. So each one of them had a midah, each one of them had a characteristic, and they're called inreach, outreach, and synthesis. What I want you to understand is how these 3 things play with each other. Now keep in the back of your mind, if you leave this class early, you're not going to get to the point of this class, because eventually I want to bring these things back into the 3 segments of time, the 3 parts of the 24-hour clock. But let's have a look at these 3 midos for a moment. The Kabbalists have what's called the parable, in Hebrew, the mashal, of the mother and child. It's a classic Kabbalistic parable. I'm going to say it over to you. This parable, we're going to be using it for Shachris, Mincha, and Mariv, for Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Know that if this was another class, we could also use it for Pesach, Shavuos, or Sukkot. Or we could use it for many other classic trilogies in Judaism. You can show how this mashal works out. But this mashal is based on the following premise. Do not take this too accurately, too detailed. This is what's called a parable. It's an idea, which states that a mother and child have 3 moments of extreme closeness. And each one of those 3 moments have nothing to do with each other. Each one of these moments is a unique moment of what's called kirva, what's called closeness, what's called connection between a mother and a child. The first special closeness is called the moment of birth. So what happens at the moment of birth? What happens at that point then? So literally, the mother and child are connected by the tube, right? The umbilical cord. There we go. So they're literally connected. They're really two people, but they're literally connected physically as one. But interestingly, you look at the child. When the child comes out of the mother, the child is facing away from the mother, as if to say, my destiny is to be distant from you. In other words, that's, so to speak, the symbolism. It's all symbolic. The child comes out of the mother's womb and says, adios, mama, okay? I've got to go and make my own way, find my own story. If the mother's a good mother, when you teach parenting, the first thing you teach a parent is let go of the apron strings. Kid has to fall, and that way they know how to pick themselves up. They got to learn life skills. So, so little Joey says, goodbye, big mama, and he turns around and he's facing away because he has to discover his own essence. So Joey grows up and he becomes a young man. And then he goes to whatever, I'm just going to make this up. He goes to university, he gets his PhD, he becomes whatever, a professional, whatever, and then eventually he reaches the top of his career, and he ends up working in the Trump cabinet. Just saying this because of how ridiculous it sounds. But the point is that still getting used to it. The point I'm trying to make is that as he reached the top of his career, and he's very, very distant from Big Mama. And then suddenly, okay, he's facing away from Mama. Suddenly he feels this tremendous urge to be reconnected to his mother. So look at me for a moment, okay? I'm Joey, and then I'm going to go like this. This is my Gvura moment. This is when I turn around 180 degrees, and I want to go back to Big Mama. I want to go back to her. I miss her tremendously. Just to give you a parable to the parable, there are girls in this room who have had a fight with a best friend. Okay, these things happen. You have a fight with a best friend. You're not talking for several weeks. But secretly, you both miss each other. And one day, you pick up the phone, you say, enough is enough, and you call her. And she says to you, oh, I miss you too. And it's one of those gushy, mushy moments that the male gender cannot get. And at that point then, you say, okay, let's meet for frozen yogurt, or whatever wild things that you do, okay? Okay. So the guy said, okay, let's meet for beer. The point is that at that point then, you haven't met each other. You haven't hugged, you haven't seen each other for a while, but you've changed direction. You're no longer going away, you're now facing each other once again. You've turned everything around. And then thirdly and finally is called the moment of embrace. But here is very special. Here you have a grown-up and another grown-up, mother and son. And they're facing each other, and they embrace. At that moment of the embrace, two people have become one again. That's an intense moment of closeness. That's the third moment. That's the Yaakov moment, as we're going to see in a moment. So what we have is the following thing. In this idea, we see that as we go through our lives, we do our own thing, but there's three moments of intense closeness that we have with God. Now let's go through it with the 24-hour clock and see how beautiful this is. There's something special about sunrise. I don't know if you guys have actually seen a sunrise. Right? I know you girls like to sleep in. But if you're at a sunrise, there is an extreme feeling deep down inside that the world is filled with hope. There's a certain beauty. Morning has broken like the first morning. You got that thing. Mom, you remember that song, okay? It's from our time. So there's things, that moment of possibilities, the moment of where everything could possibly be. So it doesn't matter where you are. The sunrise, even in New York, the sunrise is beautiful. It's a funny thought. I'm saying to you, I arrive always in Newark early in the morning. The night flight comes to Newark, and then I rent a car, and I'm always going trying to get to the George Washington Bridge or the Lincoln Tunnel, and you see the sunrise over Manhattan, and it's stunning. It's a certain magnificence about seeing a sunrise. It's always the birds are chirping, and just this feeling that you can do anything. That's the moment that Abraham catches. Avram catches the world when it's filled with hope and it's in the mood to expand. This is what's called the outreach. It's the moment, the maximum moment of building, where everything is possible. Everything is possible. I don't know if you ever had a newborn in your house. Baruch Hashem, thank God, I've been very, very blessed. But when you have a newborn in your house, so a newborn baby, on a purely technical level, is this useless little creature that basically just does one thing. You know what I mean? It feed me, I'm hungry. That's all it wants, is food. That's all it is, okay? It's a little thing. But in reality, if you hold a newborn, so you cannot help but smile, and you cannot help but feel filled with hope. And a newborn puts a whole fragrance into the house. The whole house is filled with it's like magic. I mean, a little baby in the house. And that's Avram Avinu's personality. When we say that Avram tikein tfilas shacharis, that he instituted the morning prayer, what it means is Avram Avinu's personality and everything that he gave to this world naturally finds its expression in the 24-hour clock at sunrise. Avram Avinu had a house where the doors were open in all four directions. It's a very powerful symbolism. He gives and he gives and he gives, has nothing left for himself. That's why Sarah used to sing the song, "Love is an open door." That was a joke, okay? That's it. That love was just the giving in every direction. Avram Avinu is the builder. Avram Avinu goes out and changes people's lives. He changes every single person today that lives a meaningful life should know that it comes ultimately back from Abraham. This is Jew and non-Jew. The whole power of the monotheistic concept, which has built everything good in Western civilization, comes from this one man, the giver, and he catches the world at sunrise. That's the moment of birth. That's the moment filled with possibilities. But then the day begins. And as the day begins, you get more and more distant from that beautiful moment of creation. And the sun reaches its zenith and then starts to fall. And the idea of falling is that part of life is that moment of feeling distance. Distance from your roots, distance from where you came from, and you feel this sudden urge to get back, but you don't even know how you're going to do it. You need a special kind of a person. You need a special kind of a power to go like this. Remember this? To turn everything round. The ability that asked, if you remember exactly the words of Maimonides, this man wrote a prayer as the day is dying, as the world is filled with anxiety because we're losing everything. So for example, in the morning you may have made promises. Today I'm going to do this, that, and the other. And now the day is coming, you didn't do even half of what you wanted. Who is going to give you that hope, that power to reconnect with your roots? And by the way, I'm going to give a whole class just to explain this idea, because what I'm saying now, a little bit esoteric. But to explain to you what it means in real life terms, I'm going to have to give a whole class on this. And that is the ability, what's called gevura. The gevura of Yitzchak is an internal gevura, is the ability to change everything around. I just had this conversation with a student of mine this week, and she was, I'm not going to say too much details because it could be you know her, but her whole life was focused on one career. And everything fell apart for her. Whatever it is, okay, she didn't succeed in that career. And I told her, just because you had a dream when you're 15, doesn't mean you can't turn everything around and you can't start something new. You shouldn't feel that you're a failure. Your career does not define you. It's just a career. It's just a career. Could be that in 10 years' time you look back and see this was the greatest blessing that you switched careers. I know a lot of people like that. So do some of you. But that's gevura. That needs to go like this with your life, to turn everything that you thought and to turn it around 180 degrees. You need a lot of inner strength. That's Yitzchak. That's Isaac. That's when the sun is dying. Yitzchak connects us back to that beautiful moment of sunrise. In practice, for those of you that see how davening works, the morning prayers, we climb this ladder. Morning prayers takes whatever, half an hour, 45 minutes. It's complex. The mincha works like a booster shot. I'm not really explaining myself. It's short. In practice, I just was in Manhattan now, right? Manhattan. So you see all the the Sephardic people. They put on their kippas. They go to the secret room. You come in and suddenly, wow! It's a stunning shul. It's in the middle of the office, in the middle of the building. There's a few places like that. It's incredible. That's it. And then they do this 10, 15 minutes, and then they're connected, and the rabbi says a short Torah idea, and then they go back to their businesses. But that moment, they reconnect to everything, where everything began. And then there's Yaakov. And Yaakov, I really cannot explain now, because I have so much to say about this extraordinary man. Yaakov finds God at night, because at that moment, when you see nothing, you see everything. At the moment when there's total darkness, that's the moment of clarity that man is not in control. And you have two choices. You can either go and party the night away, take some alcohol, like the good old days, right? Take some alcohol, find some people from the other gender, and just party the way with some loud, disorientating music. Or there's another choice out there. And that is what Yaakov is. You can raise yourself to what's called Torah, to emes. You can raise yourself. That's the hug. The hug is not just a hug. The hug is the admission at that moment of intense closeness that everything really is yours. Everything was yours all along. Everything I have was always from you. It's that clarity, the titan emes li'Yaakov. That's the prayer for the night. And that's a voluntary prayer, because it's a prayer that has to come from your own experiences, something you want to give over. So those are the three prayers, and those are the 24-hour clock. Now, what we're going to be doing in this room for the next 3 weeks is the following. Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, each one of them gave us a prayer. What I'm going to teach you the next 3 weeks is to look at the morning and the afternoon and the evening as 3 segments of your life. And before you take your 3 steps and start a prayer, you have to ask yourself, which zone am I in? Am I in the Abraham zone, the Isaac zone, the Yitzchak zone, or the Yaakov zone? It's a different way of thinking. It's a totally different way of thinking. So for example, I'm going to explain to you, the morning is the best time to ask for Hashem to heal people, but the afternoon is the best time to ask Hashem for a shidduch, to find your partner in life. The different times of day have got different innate strengths. And each one of the forefathers took his personality and translated it into prayer, and it came out naturally into different moments in the 24-hour clock. It's an incredible idea that the Maharal, this is an incredible idea. So until next week, I want to wish you all, please do not forget this class, because we're going to build on this class. But please do not this idea. Those of you who have not davened mincha, you give a little short thought for your forefather, Yitzchak Avinu, and the ability to never give up hope, the ability to turn everything around. And with that, you unleash your power of mincha, and you'll see it has a different taste, a different quality to it. Thank you so much for listening.